Hey there, and welcome to Unit 9. We're talking about area, surface area, and volume. We've got quite a few formulas that you are going to need. So what we're going to do is create a foldable with it. So the first section is going to be all about formulas that you've already discussed in the past. Okay, so these include our rectangles, squares, parallelograms, triangles, and circles. Now please don't write these down just yet. We're going to get to that in just a moment, and you'll see what I mean by that, but don't write them down just yet. But a rectangle, we've got two ways we can look at it. You can either say length times width, or you can say base times height. Doesn't really matter which one you want to reference, but it means the same thing. We have our squares, and we can call it, because it's technically a rectangle, as we learned in Unit 7, but so we can call length times width or base times height, but since the sides are the same, we're going to say it's the side squared. Then we have our parallelograms, and that's base times height, just like the rectangle is, because essentially it's taking a rectangle and kind of sliding it a little bit, like making it a little crooked. So it's base times height or length times width. A triangle we've used many times, 1/2 base times height, and the circle we used in our favorite unit last unit, which is pi r squared. So what we're going to do now is make a foldable. What you're going to need to do is hit the pause button and grab 4 pieces of colored paper. When you have those, go ahead and hit the play button. All right, so here I am showing you how to make your foldable. As I said, you're going to need 4 pieces of paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those 4 pieces of paper and we're going to stagger them a little bit. So as you can see, I'm putting them right on top of each other so that the top and the bottom has a little bit of space as we go. And I'll kind of give you a zoom in about how big those spaces should be. So to kind of take a look at that, see how we have these little gaps, okay? It doesn't have to be gigantic. You can make it bigger, but you don't want to make it too large, okay? So now we're going to fold it. Make sure you don't fold it so that you don't see lots of flaps, okay? When you do it, you want to make sure you're folding it so that you end up with essentially 8 flaps. So you see how when I fold it down, okay, I poured myself 8 flaps. Make sure you have that gap between the colors that are the same color because we're going to be using both of those flaps on there. Go ahead and fold that crease and make sure it's nice and tight. And then after you have it all folded, because some of you with OCD will probably make it a little bit prettier than I did, you're going to take a stapler and at the very, very, very top, you're going to go ahead and staple it so that all those papers stay together in one spot. And so what we have now is a foldable. If you need to review those instructions, go ahead and rewind. And then what you're going to do from here now is start labeling it. This foldable is all about area, surface area, and volume. So on the first flap, go ahead and write that down, area, surface area, and volume. And we're going to be filling in all these flaps. So for the very first flap, I want you to label it as triangles, squares, rectangles, parallelograms, and circles. And all those formulas we just discussed are going to be there, okay? So if you need to go through that again, go ahead and hit the pause button and review that. So now that you have your foldable all kinds of set up, and we'll fill in the rest as we go. So we just were worried about that first one. We're going to open up the very top flap to display the very first gap. If you're not sure which one I'm talking about, please make sure you ask your teacher. And we're going to start filling in those formulas. So let's first start about the triangles. Our triangles, we've been doing many times, is areas base 1/2 base times height. There are 3 different triangles. We've got our obtuse triangle, which is the first one. The height is actually on the outside of the triangle here, and the base only goes up to the actual triangle length. This little piece outside is not included. So go ahead and draw that triangle in. And then we have our acute triangle. The height now is inside the triangle, as you can see here, and the base is side to side of the whole thing. And then finally we have our right triangles. So our right triangles, our base and the height, are part of our triangles. So the area is 1/2 base times height. We have our squares. The area of a square is base times height, so you can look at it that way, or you can look at it as being side squared. But since all those sides are the same length, and it doesn't matter if we use base times height, it's going to end up being the same idea as doing side squared. Then from there, we're going to go ahead and draw in our rectangles. Our rectangles, as we saw, have opposite sides of the same and the 4 right angles there. So I'm going to label all that stuff, which was those markings, and base and height, or length and width, same thing. So the area is base times height. The parallelograms is the next one. So like we said, it's kind of a slanted rectangle. And so from there, we can find 2 areas for height. We can find it inside, where it's top to bottom. Again, there's a right angle there. Or we can find it on the outside here. You can also find it here if you really wanted to, okay? But the base is only touching the parallelogram, so it's that portion there. And so the area is base times height. And then finally, we have our circles. Again, I'm not an artist here, so please forgive me if these are awful. But the circles, we have a radius, and so to find the area of a circle, it's pi r squared. Okay, so make sure you get all these written in, and once you do, go ahead and hit that stop button, What you're going to find is you're only going to have a practice and an application for this section, and then you're going to go ahead and move on. Since we've done stuff with triangles, squares, rectangles, parallelograms, and circles already, we already know you know how to use those formulas, so you're going to go ahead, do the practice application, and then move on to your next section. Okay, go ahead and hit that stop button.